I wanted to know, first of all, tell us your background, Emilio. Emilio DeSoto is the brand owner and Maestro Tequilero, is that correct?
Sí, yes.
Okay. Of Dos Almas. Why tequila? Because what's your background? I always love to ask people, how did you get into tequila? Because you know,
Yeah.
you're obviously a very fit guy.
Primero soy cubano, no soy mexicano. ¿Cómo es posible que un cubano va a inventar una marca de tequila?
Mira, te voy a decir que Alex Perez, nuestro fundador,
Ajá.
es cubano también.
Ah, qué bueno.
Así que
Okay.
mi padre fueron de Nicaragua.
Ajá.
Lo mejor de tequila, lo que pasa con tequila es que la mayoría de los buenos catadores no son mexicanos, son de otros países.
Sí, sí.
Todos mis maestros fueron catadores de la Academia Mexicana del Tequila, la primera academia. Y ese señor fue salvadoreño. A veces me falla el español.
No, pero si lo hago en
My Spanglish is better.
Let's talk in English then.
Okay.
Of course, yeah.
All
The
right.
majority
Well,
can be.
but we have, our audience is global. You know, the United States is always the first one, and then Mexico and or Canada and or Great Britain. So
Perfect.
they come from everywhere. I don't speak Japanese, but I'm working on it. But anyway, yeah, my first teacher was from El Salvador, and his partner, who also was a catador, is from Holland. So it's really interesting that the people who love tequila are from all over the world.
Sure.
It's really a global spirit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
Well, I think that the big advantage also was just my ability to go to Jalisco, strike up conversations with people in the industry, out of the industry, at restaurants, drinking tequila, harvesting agave plants,
Was tequila
just about
your
every
first love?
aspect.
I mean, when you were you a Scotch guy, a rum guy? If you're
No,
from
no.
Cuba, you know.
No, absolutely not. No, it was one of the first spirits that I tasted that I enjoyed, and was blessed to have been able to taste good tequila back in the mid to late 70s. I worked as a busboy and then a waiter at a restaurant in Monterrey, California, called Consuelos.
Monterrey, northern
Yes,
California?
yes,
Okay.
in Northern California. And so I was not of drinking age, but just like sampling beer and everything else, I was privy by some of the cooks and the management there and the ownership to really enjoy 100% agave, really old brands at a young age. And of course, like anything, when you're first trying a spirit, it requires a certain getting used to, just like a good jalapeno or something.
Sure.
You know, what I learned quickly though, in going away to school, went to school at UC Santa Barbara, was that wasn't what most people drank. It was the mixtos,
Yep.
and it's what I think that the three of us and everybody who watches any of these videos and is on any of the tequila Facebook and social media platforms, as I mentioned to Lisa earlier, it's kind of the upper tip of the pyramid, the part that sticks out of the water. You know,
Right.
there's not many of us, but we try to make a big impression on any ship that comes by. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot
basically-
going on underneath that
There's-
iceberg.
Yes,
man.
exactly.
And it's all
Exactly.
dangerous.
Yeah.
No,
It may cause you to sink.
yeah, and a lot of times the tide causes the tip to look a lot smaller. You know?
Yeah.
But anyway, so at a pretty young age, it wasn't something that I was campaigning and telling people, but rather when friends would be drinking wine or Bartles and James or whatever it was that they were drinking, including beer, because most of us started with probably pretty bad beer too. I quietly would just order my tequilita and that's what I'd be drinking, you know. And then if somebody asked, I'd say, yeah, this tastes different. You know, I didn't really know back then how much different it felt and what, you know, because at such a young age, it's all kind of just a pure buzz. You
Yeah.
know?
So tell us how you got into the sportswear business, because you're
Right.
obviously a very fit guy, triathlete maybe.
Yeah. So
you just got back from Ironman too.
I did. I just got back from Ironman. Yeah. In college, I had a pretty serious surfing accident. It left me partially paralyzed from the waist up. As part of my rehabilitation, I was encouraged to get in the water and do all sorts of motion exercises. I looked at the UC Santa Barbara swim team and water polo team at the opposite end of the pool. I realized that they were doing one-arm swim technique strokes and things like that as part of their workout, and I asked the coach to show me how to swim with one arm. And riding the bike was something that I did anyway because that was my transportation to and from class, and running was what I did to escape and run and cry and wonder how long I was going to be paralyzed. Fortunately, it was something that required just a lot of months and actually many years of rehabilitation, physical therapy, and electromuscle stimulation and things like that. And my first goal, I saw that there was this race where you needed to swim, bike, and run all without stopping in Santa Barbara. And I did it. In my first race, I finished in 15th place out of 500 people, all with basically a bum arm.
Wow.
And so that was the launch of something.
So if that doesn't mean perseverance.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was the launch of something that for me made me think, hey, this sport can give me new meaning and a new reason to new purpose. Yeah. Other than the surfing and the other things that I could no longer do because of my injury. And it gave me an opportunity to travel all over the world. When I turned 30, I was on a beach in Brazil, having just won a race and thinking, this is great, I'm kind of at the top of my game, this isn't going to last forever, I have to do something different. And so I started a clothing company. And the clothing company was basically triathlon apparel. So what is that? Well, before I started what I'm doing now, there was swimming apparel, cycling apparel, and running apparel. And there were even triathlon clothing companies. But they didn't make anything specifically that you can swim and bike and run in without changing.
Right.
And so that's what I developed. I innovated products that have been adopted by large companies and by many, many sports. Years ago, track runners used to run in loose shorts and loose shirts. Now they're wearing aerodynamic suits because they're running so fast. Same with swimmers. They used to wear small little briefs, and now they're wearing these technical suits. And same with cyclists. And so the sport of triathlon and my company, we innovated a lot of products that are commonly found across all sorts of sports now, not just swimming, cycling, and running, speed skating, anything that involves aerodynamics or hydrodynamics or leg speed or preservation of muscles and reduction of muscle fatigue and things, compression garments,
So you've been doing this for how long?
So I've been doing DeSoto sport for about 28 years.
Okay.
And so
what happened
through all that, the marriage here kind of came from the fact that after some of my most important races, and the older I got, I stopped racing professionally, and the older I got, these triathlons became social events. And the races would happen, and then we would celebrate. If we were in Santa Barbara, we'd go in the San Ynez Valley and go wine tasting. But if we were in Santa Barbara, we'd all go to El Agave and have some really good quality margaritas and drink a lot of tequila. And races became a place where I would encourage people, hey, go pick yourself up a bottle of tequila and bring it, so we can have it poolside or something. Here are some requirements. It needs to have an NOM. It needs to say 100% agave. When the things were really basic to be able to tell, if it was truly 100% agave and not a mixto. Now, if we were all doing this, it would have a lot more requirements, right?
Gotta say Dos Almas on the label.
Well, but in all honesty, you know what?
I bring the 110, man.
It's easy for me now, but it doesn't stop me from still enjoying a lot of other brands, and that's the sort of thing that I think has been really beautiful about the tequila community, for the most part, is that I have never felt so welcome in such a short period of time into the innermost circle. It started actually years ago when I would go to Jalisco and go tequila tasting. And we all know David Yan, and he was one of the people early on who was so encouraging.
He's a great guy and one of the master teachers on the fly. He teaches stuff like this.
Yes. And
he's really good.
And when you meet him, you truly feel like you're his friend. And I actually approached him a number of times about the idea of doing this, and he was the one who actually told me that La Cofradia was purely a supplier to Casanoble when they sold it to Constellation.
Yeah,
and so
they're one of the more reputable, probably very few, like a handful of reputable maquiladoras. They make a lot of different brands for a lot of
They
different people.
do.
And a lot of them are winners too. That's the
Yeah,
thing.
and a lot of them are, you know, I think they might be probably the largest, but a lot of them are private brands. You know, they're bottling stuff for clients for personal consumption and everything. But anyway, so it finally got to a point where once I was doing with my partner, my business partner in this, we were doing some pretty off the wall mixology, and my partner's daughter walked in and tasted something that we had made an infusion, and she said, "This tastes like Fireball." And he didn't know what it was. I knew what it was. I also knew the ingredients that were in it, and I've always been, again, a know your source sort of person. Not just with triathlon clothing, but just the lifestyle that my wife and I and children live here in San Diego. We thought we had a winner, and it was really funny because I started giving some of my close friends some of my moonshine. I mean, this was stuff that got to the point where I was getting phytosanitary certificates. I was bringing agave piñas across the border.
Wow.
Cutting them up, baking them in an oven at home, and squeezing them and doing the fermentation and everything, the distillation, all
what
at
kind
home.
of yeast were you using?
Actually,
Just let it ferment.
airborne.
That?
Yep,
Oh,
natural
wow.
airborne fermentation, just the same as we're doing in La Cofradía.
Just out of curiosity, where are you living?
We live in La Jolla.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so whatever is in the atmosphere of La Jolla is open air fermentation
And
your
yeah,
juice.
it's pretty incredible with combination of the salt air and
Yeah,
the
salt air.
canyon where we live. There's a lot of trees. There's a lot of vegetation. We have 8 chickens that give us eggs every morning and stuff. And they're kept far away from any
Well,
cooking
yeah,
that's
of
done.
course.
But we have natural composting going on and everything in our backyard, so it's actually really cool. So what happened here was that my Tequila Aficionado friends basically thought I was selling out. They said, how could you even be making something? I said, you guys, this is going to be a great product for people who don't like tequila. Some people just can't get over that taste, and they can't get over all the lime and all the other stuff they put in their margaritas that mask the beautiful sweetness of the agave plant. So, in fact, when Chris and I met, he had no interest in tasting this, and I was perfectly fine with it because it was pretty congruent with all.
He's a purist, isn't he?
Yes. But the funny thing is that my friend said, "You're selling out, man. This is, you should do something different." And I thought to myself, what is it that I could create to blow them away? And what I wanted to do was to give them, because we were all of us have blancos. That's it. I mean, at least my closest partners in the enjoyment, that's all we have at home, are blancos. And I have quite a few of them. Will I drink others? Yes, of course. In good company, of course. But again, I get more picky with those choices as well.
Oh, yeah.
And so this was my answer to them. And what I wanted to create
So
was...
you started with this one first,
Yes.
and then worked your way to the Blanco. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so, and keep in mind, this was all before we started a production, before I harvested those highlands organic plants from Tepatitlan. I gave them this, and what I wanted them to see was my ability to take a still strength tequila and soften it up in a special way that nobody in the tequila industry is doing. My purification process is what makes this softer, smooth,
More approachable.
more approachable. Yeah. That combined with something of a different shape than a stossel. Okay, than the stossels you guys use, the stossels that...
You mean the Riedels?
The Riedels, right.
Yeah, we're actually working with a gentleman right now that I didn't bring any with me. I should have. We're hoping that there'll be a new what we call tequila glass called the Jarrito tumbler, and we're working on that. We have hybrids right now, and we're probably really close to getting Stossel to mass produce those.
Okay,
and
but
they're much better.
Are those
than
what
the
you've
wheels.
been using on sipping off the cuff for
Lately?
Okay,
yeah.
lately, so
Glen
probably-
Cairns, nothing with it. Doesn't have a stem.
Okay, yeah, okay, all right.
They're stemless. The gentleman who was designing those is out of Austin. He's actually an archaeologist, believe it or not.
Nice.
And he feels that he wanted to come up with something that was more archaeologically and historically accurate for agave spirits, because when you go through these digs like he has, you don't find artifacts that have handles or stems. The handle and the stem are actually European inventions, and the handles are inventions via Europe, via China. Mm-hmm. So, but when you dig these up, and they're primarily for drinking chocolate, because that was the first thing that they. So, he has developed a type of glassware that will say agave spirit, like the Glen Cairns says whiskey.
Okay.
And like wine goblets say wine, and so. I'm sorry for not bringing them. That's my fault.
No.
I'd love to have your input on those.
Yeah,
I can tell you from a restaurant perspective, it's a great thing, right? Because we have to be concerned with breakage and costs. And when you introduce a stem to anything, your breakage goes way up. Especially if you're doing, a party of, like next month or in a couple weeks, we've got the dinner down at Urban Wood. I'm going to have 60, 70, 80 people in there, multiple courses. I've got to buy a lot of glassware, and I can't be concerned about how much it's going to break.
Right.
So get rid of the stem, and we're in good shape.
Either by the consumer or the dishwasher, right?
Yeah.
Well,
exactly
even the consumer. I mean, how many reels have you broken?
Clean
wash
it down.
Yeah. And so, Cesar and Rick did a tasting of my 55 Plata on their Las Vegas Tequila Patrol. And it just inspired me. I haven't had time to do it yet, but it inspired me to respectfully present to them the possibility of using a large red wine goblet. Okay, something that will allow you to kind of cut through the clutter of the alcohol, while actually tilting the glass more and utilizing that alcohol to maybe open up your olfactory senses and everything to prepare you for what's to come. Because I think that it doesn't cause as much of a shock as when you are smelling and then sipping without being able to have your nose involved at the same time as the sip. Not to say necessarily that you're going to be inhaling while you do it, but the fact that if you inhale in a red wine goblet, and I don't want to get too off the tangent, but I want to sell my product, and I want to sell it in a way that makes it easier for those, if all you're doing is drinking them out of a traditional tequila glass or something, is to drink it like this and understand that if you don't tip the glass too much, where your nose is parallel to the surface of the liquid, you won't get so much of that alcohol burn when you inhale. It's all from it being parallel to the bottom of your nose being parallel to the liquid. If on the other hand you smell it up right here with some slight swirls, you get a sense of the alcohol, of course, but you're starting to get that sweetness, the earthiness and everything of our plant. And it's nice because then once it is in your mouth and you swallow it, I think that you've discussed the retronasal as well. Yes. It's a completely different story. It's not as much of a shock, and from the very first sip, it makes a big difference.
So is Chris kind of like a mentor, or kind of watching over you and with those Almas, or is this just a friendship that
No, actually, we've both been so busy. We both have kids and we both have lives and everything, but we've communicated quite a bit about a number of different things and everything. And I knew of Chris for many years before we actually met. I never thought of contacting him because I've been more of a lurker in that aspect, because why bug somebody with just casual conversation? I mean, sure, hey, it'd be great if we had met at a tasting or something like that. But I approached him shortly after my product arrived because I gave some to Rachel Nichols. Do you know Rachel?
Mm-hmm.
Just out of sheer coincidence, we got in touch, and she just reached out to me and said, "We're doing this tasting at
One of our other restaurants.
right at Green Acres." Yeah, and I drove them to the Catamaran Hotel. I left them on the front lobby with the concierge because she wasn't in. I think she was actually seeing Z at the time, and then the tasting happened. I started contacting her basically week after week, like, "Hey, do you have any results? How did it go? Anything?" And she's like, "Well, I got to be honest with you. There was a blind tasting. I'll get your results." And it took about 2 months to get the results. And when I got them, I saw Chris's review of Dos Almas on the blind tasting, and then I reached out to him. I was like, "Chris, you've tasted my product. I'd love for you to come to one of our little gatherings that we're going to have up in North County. I'd love for you to taste it again and everything." And so that's where it started. And
Are you as impressed as I am?
I'll tell you, I'm very impressed. I've brought it into my restaurants. I love to talk to my staff about it. For me, it's agave, and then just a little bit more agave. Right?
Yeah.
That's what I love about it. From the moment I tasted it blindly at that first tasting to this morning when I had some for breakfast.
Can we have
it's
some
Friday, right?
Can we have some now?
It's Friday. Listen, that was to the point that Chris made. This was the only Blanco that was over 80%. There weren't even high proofs in the 90s, or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so his review was butted up against other Blancos at 80%.
And I've come to learn that in other tastings. It's just not fair if you don't know that you're dealing with something higher proof, right? So, but once I think I would disagree with you guys a little bit in the cups, and I'm not sure what Rick said in his review. I've missed that one, but when I drink this, I anticipate the higher alcohol, and I actually look forward to it. I think that's what allows that agave to really shine. And maybe it's because most of the spirits I'm tasting day in and day out are in a neat nature, if you will. I don't really drink cocktails, so my palate is prepared for that. But I appreciate that alcohol. I think that it plays very well with all the other components of the spirit, and I don't think it's too much. I think it works.
Yeah.
Having spoken with gentlemen, distillers like Herman Gonzalez or even Carlos Campana, the alcohol, whereas there are some vessels that profess to diffuse the alcohol to make it less offensive. When it comes to tequila, you have to expect it because the alcohol is part of the overall organoleptic experience. And yes, I agree with you. You have to expect it, and I think that I think it's important now to have the quality or the lack of quality in some tequila has outpaced the real, and I think it's time for a new vessel. So that's why we were approached by this gentleman, and I'm really sorry I didn't bring it.
No, I think it's awesome.
But I think it's right on par with a Glencairn. I know that, for instance, there's a restaurant up in Austin that uses Glencairns exclusively for all their tequilas, and I asked the gentleman why. Yeah, and he said because I think it's the best glass there is. Yeah. And there's a certain way of using a Glencairn where the alcohol just comes up to greet you and says hello.
Yeah. And to your point, Chris, I should clarify. It's what I would propose to somebody who's not used to drinking a high proof, and is going to taste it for the first time.
That makes sense.
You see, because me too. I could have it out of the bottom of a coffee cup.
Yeah, out of your shoe.
yeah. I mean, the old horns.
Even from a caballito, because and the thing was this year particularly we had a brand called Armero, also made at La Cofradía, 7 different iterations of tequila, and you didn't, and so it gave us a spectrum of what is possible out of La Cofradía, because I didn't think that they could actually break it down and make different ones. How many flavor profiles can you come up with? And they did it.
Cool.
They did it. I think between Rick, one of our other tasters, who's actually Lisa's brother, and myself, we decided that one of the reposados was probably a throwaway. It was not necessary. because it was the weakest link in all 7 of them. But it was interesting for me to find that, as far as I know right now, that I think that one is the only high proof coming out of Liquefaria, unless you know of another one. I don't know of
That's
another
all I
one
know.
out there.
I can tell you both that it is.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And that's great, because that's what you want.
Yeah.
Again, you're trying to distinguish yourself from everybody else on the shelf, and we as tasters, or as a community of information, we need to also make sure that we distinguish you from
Yeah.
everybody else.
Yeah.
Because I think it's only fair.
Yeah. You also, I mean, I don't need to tell you guys, but you eliminate a very important dimension. You know, there are so many different waters.
Oh yeah.
You see, I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you know,
Well water versus rainwater. You know that
Avion
Felipe
versus
Camarena doing
Pellegrino.
what he's doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, and a couple of his brands are actually on our tour with us, and the stuff he's doing with rainwater. This one's a 60-40, this one's a 50-50, and I'm going,
They're all Zen Azote.
yeah, and this was strictly well water,
Mhm.
and because of that genius, he's got 3 different flavor profiles, and there's 2 of them that I prefer over one of the other ones, but genius, you know, and so yeah, the water, it's like you said, there's everything that makes that goes into this juice. It influences the end result.